So part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, please go check out part 1 and go and check out part 1 if you are speaking British English, which I used to. Go and check out part 1 because that is the beginning of what is a soul. So to carry on from that, we are an individuation of oneness. We are part of the jigsaw. We are of source. We are of God. We are God. It's like saying that this little finger is not me. It is just a little finger, a little pinky finger, but it is also me. It is also part of my body, me in the context of the body. So that's kind of what the soul is. And in that same regard, we all have a part to play in the oneness, every single individuation. The individuation of the soul is not only one stream of conscious awareness. It has the ability to experience multiple perspectives at once. But that doesn't necessarily always happen here in this earthly experience. So you, as a soul, are present all over lots of different places in all that is. And the beauty of being here and now is that we get to basically slow things down enough to really, really look at the detail and to be able to experience duality, as in there is a self and there is another self. So we really experience kind of a mirror experience of the creator and the created in one place here on earth, if one can awaken to that experience. So then what about a twin soul, or a split soul, or a same soul, or a twin flame? Twin soul is a preferred term, or split soul, one soul. So there's a stream, an individuation, a piece of the jigsaw that gets to experience itself all over all that is. And we might call that cross-dimensionally or multiversally, or, there's so many different awarenesses that exist, things that we can be aware of, places, spaces, beyond time and space. So the soul is going on this journey. It's almost like it's just on a journey to experience. That is the point. The point of life is to experience our journey. So when a soul gets to a certain point of evolution where it's kind of been journeying and it's evolving, it's remembering a lot, it's been around the block quite a few times, it's experienced many different, if it helps you to have the context of multiple lives on earth, experienced many lives, experienced many perspectives on many different levels, in many different time spaces. It gets to a point where it kind of thinks to itself, especially in this earthly experience, which is a very, very special experience in terms of experiencing all that is. We have the capacity here from a very small perspective to increase our perspective, to have the experience of becoming more. So the soul gets to a point where it asks itself, or it has the desire to experience at double the speed this earthly experience. So it says to itself, what if I split into two and got to experience at the same time, in the same time space, of which all time spaces are different, I could get to explore that at double the speed, or twice at the same time, in order to speed up my evolution, in order to go up a gear. So to begin with, the soul has to be at a point of evolution whereby it's remembered a lot. So every soul is equal. It is part of a stream connected to the one, kind of on this journey. But at different points in space and time, it is aware of where it has been. So level of evolution basically means how much it's experienced and how much it remembers of what it's experienced. You know, what it is consciously aware of. And so that soul individuation splits into two so that it can experience more. These souls are rare. There are not many souls on earth that have gotten to that point of evolution in the first place. That essentially has had and remembered a lot of its experience, of its exploration of existence, of all that is in this expanded form. And so, it's rare for it even to occur. It is also then even more rare that they should meet, because that meeting only occurs when that soul is ready to end its journey, that ends where it began. So essentially, there is a kind of pointlessness to life if one is trying to achieve or get somewhere other than we are. If we're trying to achieve something other than to be present, we are missing the entire point. All of life exists in this now moment. The twin soul is about evolution. It's about a speediness of your soul's evolution. It's not about a relationship in a certain form, though it is that as well. It's not solely about that. The sole purpose is to experience more. That is the sole primary, it's not the sole purpose, but it is the sole purpose, S-O-L-E, sole purpose, but it is the primary focus. There are also secondary points of focus or reasons. The point is to merge oneself. It's also very powerful and fast to experience oneself as masculine and feminine at the same time. For a soul to experience those two seemingly opposing or different perspectives and forms, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in differing sexes, but it's polarities in terms of energy and flow, or the positive and the negative, all of those things, light and dark. It's about exploring duality and merging. Without the dual, there cannot be the one, or the experience of oneness has been split. And so it's a very powerful experience for the soul to experience itself in two differing forms that are one and the same. So essentially, it's here to remind us that we are separate and one. It's not just to remind us that we're one, it's also to remind us that we're separate. It is a simultaneous awareness of oneness and separation. It's a very high level of evolution. It has been romanticized that there's some kind of special mission for twin souls to be on for the evolution of humanity. That is true, as in any highly evolved soul is extremely powerful in terms of the evolution of all. So as we are all connected, the more we become collectively, the more one soul becomes, the more the whole collective becomes. And it is powerful for us to kind of return to the beginning of the story, to complete our individuated journey. In that regard, it is kind of similar to a Buddhist teaching or perspective about reincarnation and achieving nirvana and kind of not needing to be incarnated anymore. It's a similar kind of idea, though cross-dimensionally. So it's almost like, you know, it's very difficult to explain because nothing ever ends. It just transforms and changes. So even though it does seem like it is about the end of a journey of a soul, there's never really any end because oneness cannot end because we are always one. So returning to source, returning to God, returning to the one is in many ways no different from where we already are in a perspective of separation because we're already one. So there is just this truth that it is all about experience and it's not about the story or what we are trying to achieve. So there is an incredible amount of suffering in trying to get somewhere. And that is why there can be an extreme amount of suffering for people that experience themselves as a twin soul, because they feel the intense desire to merge back into the experience of oneness without the experience of separation. It's very, very close to that. And that desire is there. So it's almost like the finish line is in sight and then you kind of forget, you're not really enjoying the journey, you're much more focused on the destination. And that's why there can be more suffering, because it's almost like you're running a marathon and then the end line is in sight, but then you want to get to that end line more. It's like then you get that push of that desire. You're focused on the end line, you're not focused on the race. And because of that, there can be much more suffering because then we're not in our experience as much. We're trying to get somewhere else other than our current experience. And that is the source of all suffering. So that is what a twin soul is. It is very rare. It is challenging, but it is a process of evolution. It is all about a soul's evolution. And the biggest takeaway I would like to give you is that it is the same soul. Even though the experience of separation can feel the most strong or the most acute, it can feel biggest, the reason why it does is because it is essentially impossible. It's a lie. It teaches us that separation is a lie, is an illusion, because we are all one soul. But the experience of an individuation splitting reminds us of how we are all one that has split. It reminds us of that truth. And in that regard, that is how it helps us to remember what we are and what we always have been and what we always will be, which is one. One thing. And oneness, to be oneness, to experience oneself as source, or for source to experience itself, or God to experience itself, is an extremely beautiful experience. It's like coming home. That's why there is the desire for it, because it is the truest experience of existence. But it is always available where we are. We cannot really truly be separate. We are all one. But the twin soul experience helps us to remember what happened at the beginning. But it is a process of evolution. It is not necessarily helpful to focus on the other part of your soul as separate from you. If you experience that, that is the cause of the suffering. And that is the point. The point is that the soul, or the self, because there are two separate selves, two separate egos playing out. So there are two separate selves, but there is one soul. And so if either soul cannot be aware that they cannot be separated from that other self, if they are playing it, if then they seek to control the other, or they seek to manipulate the other, or they seek to own the other, or they seek to anything for the other, or to the other, it will not work, because it's like trying to shake your own hand. It's like trying to, well, you can kind of shake your own hand, but you know what I mean? It's a bit like trying to do anything to, you're trying to interact with yourself. And as I said, this is true of everybody. It's true of every soul that you meet, every self that you meet. But it is the fastest way to remember that all selves are you. And one must adopt a lifestyle on earth that is in alignment with themselves, with the soul. Otherwise, there will be an incredible amount of suffering. All conditioning, even all spiritual ideologies, must be transcended or moved beyond to find the individual truth. Otherwise, suffering will occur. One must live in alignment with one's own truth. It is a process of becoming more at one than ever before. And this is the truth of the twin soul experience. It is far more about the individual experience than the experience of the other, because it is all one thing. If you found this video helpful, please share with anyone else you think it could help. Lots of love. Please join my community over on Patreon if you are interested in more videos like this and like this. And also a live monthly Q&A session with me over there on Patreon. The link is below.